The jet emerged from the portal with a jolt, the familiar blue sky of Earth stretching endlessly above them. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of what they had seen, and what they now carried, was almost too much to bear. Eric Dawson guided the jet toward the airbase, his hand steady on the controls but his mind racing with questions. What would happen next? How could humanity prepare for something so vast and incomprehensible? Katie Monroe stared out the window, her notebook resting in her lap. She had filled pages with notes, sketches, and observations, but none of it felt adequate. How could words capture the enormity of what they had witnessed? Still, she knew her role was important. The world needed to know, not just about the aliens, but about the threat that loomed beyond the stars. When they landed, the team was greeted by a small group of scientists and military personnel, their faces tense with anticipation. Samantha Brooks held the case containing the alien artifacts tightly, as if afraid to let it out of her sight. "We need to analyze these immediately," she said, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "Every second counts." Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly, dissecting the alien technology piece by piece. Some items were clearly tools, while others seemed to serve purposes they couldn't yet understand. Jason Carter and Laura Bennett joined remotely, offering insights based on the data they had collected from earlier sightings. Slowly, patterns began to emerge, clues about how the aliens had tried to survive and why they had failed. Katie spent hours interviewing each member of the team, piecing together their experiences into a coherent narrative. Her article, when finally published, sent shockwaves around the globe. Governments held emergency meetings, scientists debated theories, and ordinary people looked up at the night sky with a mixture of wonder and fear. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, but it also wasn't safe. As the weeks passed, progress was made. Using the alien technology, researchers developed new ways to detect distortions in space-time, giving Earth an early warning system against potential threats. Samantha worked closely with linguists and physicists, refining her understanding of the alien messages. Though much remained unclear, one thing was certain. The aliens weren't enemies. They were survivors, just like humanity. Eric found himself reflecting on their journey often. He stood on the airbase runway one evening, watching the sunset paint the horizon in shades of orange and pink. Behind him, the jet sat silent, its mission complete, for now. "We did good," he murmured to himself. But deep down, he knew the real challenge was only beginning. Samantha approached him, holding a tablet displaying the latest analysis. "We're learning more every day," she said softly. "It's not much, but it's a start." Eric nodded. "And maybe that's all we can hope for. One step at a time." Katie joined them, her notebook tucked under her arm. "This story isn't over," she said, "but I think we've proven something important, that even in the face of the unknown, we can find a way forward." The three of them stood there in silence, gazing at the stars. Somewhere out there, the aliens continued their desperate flight, carrying the scars of worlds lost. And here on Earth, humanity had taken its first steps toward understanding the vastness of the universe and its own place within it. For now, the portal remained closed, its secrets hidden once more, but the team knew it wouldn't stay that way forever. When the time came, they would be ready. Together, they had faced the impossible, and they had come back stronger. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it as one. The alien ship hovered silently, its glow casting an eerie light over the floating debris around them. Samantha Brooks stared at her laptop, her fingers trembling as she decoded the message. The words were fragmented, but the meaning was clear. The aliens were fleeing from something catastrophic, a force so powerful that it had destroyed entire civilizations. Whatever it wasn't just a danger to them. It could threaten Earth as well. "We need to know more," Eric Dawson said, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "If this thing is coming for them, it might come for us next." Katie Monroe scribbled furiously in her notebook, trying to process everything. Her mind raced with questions. What kind of threat could wipe out entire worlds? And why had the aliens brought them here? Was it a plea for help or a warning? Something nodded, her eyes glued to the screen. They're saying they can't escape it. Their technology is failing. That's why they've been appearing near Earth. They're looking for refuge. Eric frowned. But why Earth? We don't have anything close to their level of tech. How could we possibly help? They're desperate, Samantha replied softly. Maybe they think we can offer something they haven't tried yet. Something simple, like a new perspective or even raw materials. Katie leaned forward. Or maybe they just want someone to know what happened to them, to tell their story. The team fell silent, the enormity of the situation sinking in. Humanity wasn't ready for this, not by a long shot. But now that they were here, they couldn't turn away. They owed it to the aliens, and to themselves, to try. The alien ship moved closer, its hum growing louder. A beam of light enveloped the jet, and suddenly, images began flashing across the cockpit's windshield. It was like watching a movie, but instead of actors, there were scenes of destruction, planets crumbling, stars collapsing, and ships being torn apart by an unseen force. The team watched in stunned silence, their breaths catching as the scale of the devastation became clear. This is what they're running from, Samantha whispered, her voice barely audible. It's consuming everything in its path. Eric gripped the controls tightly, his jaw clenched. We need to get back to Earth. If this thing is heading our way, we don't have much time. But how do we fight something like that? Katie asked, her voice shaking. We're talking about forces beyond our understanding. We start by learning, Samantha said firmly. Their technology might hold answers. If we can study it, maybe we can find a way to defend ourselves. The alien ship seemed to respond to her words, emitting another burst of light. This time, it illuminated a cluster of devices floating nearby, tools, and machines left behind by other species who had tried and failed to survive. The message was clear: take what you can and use it wisely. Eric guided the jet toward the debris, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of the strange dimension. As they approached, Samantha and Katie worked together to gather samples, using robotic arms attached to the jet to retrieve the alien artifacts. Each piece was carefully stored, its purpose unknown, but its potential undeniable. Back on Earth, Jason Carter and Laura Bennett monitored the team's progress remotely, their faces pale as they listened to the updates. This changes everything, Jason said quietly. If this threat reaches us, we're not ready. Laura nodded, her hands trembling as she typed commands into her computer. Then we make sure it doesn't. We'll figure this out, one step at a time. As the team prepared to leave the alien dimension, the ship emitted one final hum, a sound that felt almost like gratitude. Then, with a flash of light, it vanished, leaving them alone in the vast expanse. Eric set a course for the portal, his heart heavy but determined. They had come seeking answers, and now they were bringing them back to a world that wasn't prepared. But if anyone could rise to the challenge, it was humanity. And as the jet passed through the shimmering gateway, Katie looked out at the stars, knowing the hardest part was yet to come. The team stood at the edge of the unknown, their hearts pounding as they prepared to enter the portal. Eric Dawson sat in the pilot's seat, his hand steady on the controls despite the storm of emotions swirling inside him. Samantha Brooks was in the co-pilot's seat, her laptop connected to the scanner, ready to monitor the portal's stability. Katie Monroe sat behind them, gripping her notebook tightly, her pen poised to record every detail. This was it, the moment they had been working toward. Everyone ready? Eric asked, glancing over his shoulder. As ready as we'll ever be, Katie replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. Samantha nodded silently, her eyes fixed on the scanner's readings. The portal loomed ahead, its shimmering surface rippling like water. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a gateway to a place no human had ever seen. The ship that had led them here was long gone, leaving only this strange doorway behind. Eric guided the jet closer, the hum of the portal growing louder with each passing second. "Here we go," he muttered under his breath. With a deep breath, he pushed the throttle forward, and the jet surged into the vortex. For a moment, everything went white. The sensation was unlike anything they had ever experienced, a mix of weightlessness and pressure, as if they were being stretched and compressed at the same time. Bright lights flashed around them, and the air crackled with energy. Katie closed her eyes, clutching her seatbelt as the jet shook violently. She could hear Samantha shouting something about the scanner, but her words were drowned out by the roar of the portal. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the chaos stopped. The jet emerged into a vast, alien expanse unlike anything they had imagined. The sky, or what passed for a sky, was a swirling tapestry of colors, shifting and pulsing like living light. Floating debris drifted around them, fragments of ships and structures that seemed to belong to countless civilizations. In the distance, massive shapes moved slowly, their forms too strange to comprehend. "It's incredible," Samantha whispered, her voice trembling with awe. She stared at her laptop, where the scanner displayed readings that defied explanation. "This place, it's like a graveyard of worlds." Katie scribbled furiously in her notebook, struggling to put the scene into words. "It's like we've stepped into another dimension," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Eric kept his focus on flying, scanning the area for any signs of danger. "We need to find that ship," he said. "If we're going to get answers, it has to be here somewhere." As if on cue, a faint glow appeared in the distance. The team watched in silence as the alien ship emerged from behind a floating chunk of wreckage. It moved slowly, almost cautiously, as if studying them. Then, without warning, it emitted a low hum, the same sound they had heard before, but clearer now, more deliberate. "They're communicating again," Samantha said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "This time, it's stronger. They're trying to tell us something." The ship's glow intensified, and a beam of light shot out, illuminating a cluster of objects floating nearby. Upon closer inspection, the team realized they were pieces of technology, devices and tools left behind by other species who had ventured into this strange dimension. "They're showing us what happened to others who came here," Eric said grimly. "But why?" "Maybe as a warning," Katie suggested, "or maybe to prepare us for what's coming." Samantha continued decoding the ship's message, her face pale with concentration. "They're saying, they're fleeing. Something is chasing them. Something dangerous." The realization hit them all at once. The aliens weren't explorers or invaders. They were refugees, running from an unseen threat. And now, humanity had followed them into the same perilous realm. "What do we do now?" Katie asked, her voice shaking. "Do we stay and help, or do we try to go back?" Eric looked at the glowing ship, then at his teammates. "We made a choice to come here," he said firmly. "Now we have to see it through." The team exchanged determined glances. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The team gathered in the lab, the air thick with anticipation. Samantha Brooks stood at the center of the room, her laptop connected to the scanner Eric Dawson had modified for their bold experiment. On the screen was a simple sequence of tones and pulses, humanity's first attempt at communicating with the mysterious alien ships. It was based on mathematics, a universal language they hoped the aliens would recognize. "We're ready," Eric said, double-checking the equipment. "The scanner will broadcast the signal as soon as we detect a distortion. If they respond, we'll record everything." Jason Carter joined the meeting via video call, his face lit by the glow of his computer screen. "This could be our best shot," he said. "But remember, we don't know how they'll react. Stay cautious." Katie Monroe sat quietly in the corner, her notebook open but untouched. She felt a mix of excitement and unease. What if the aliens misunderstood their message? Or worse, what if they saw it as a threat? Still, she trusted the team's judgment. They had come too far to turn back now. For days, they waited anxiously, monitoring the skies for any sign of activity. Finally, the scanner beeped. A distortion had been detected near the equator. The team sprang into action, rushing to the jet with their gear. As they flew toward the coordinates, Samantha gripped her laptop tightly, her mind racing. Would their message work? Would the aliens even notice? When they arrived, the alien ship was already there, glowing faintly against the dark sky. The hum filled the air, louder and more intense than before. Eric activated the scanner, sending out their carefully crafted signal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's glow brightened, pulsing in rhythm with the tones they had broadcasted. "They're responding," Samantha exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. On her screen, new patterns emerged, complex sequences that mirrored their original message, but added layers of information. It was working. The aliens were communicating back. Ryan Ellis leaned closer, studying the readings. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the energy spikes. "They're amplifying our signal, like they're trying to make sure we understand." Samantha worked quickly, mapping the new patterns. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she decoded fragments of the response. "It's coordinates," she said slowly. "They're giving us directions to somewhere." "Where?" Eric asked, his eyes narrowing. "I'm not sure yet," Samantha admitted. "But it's not Earth. These numbers match points in deep space." Jason's voice crackled over the radio. Could it be an invitation? Or a warning? Before anyone could answer, the ship emitted a burst of light, brighter than anything they'd seen before. The air rippled violently, and the portal opened, a swirling vortex of energy that seemed to stretch endlessly. Katie shielded her eyes, her heart pounding. She had never seen anything so beautiful, and so terrifying. The ship lingered for a moment, then began moving toward the portal. As it passed through, the hum grew softer, fading into silence. The portal remained open, its edges shimmering faintly. "What do we do now?" Katie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eric hesitated, his hand resting on the jet's controls. "We can't just ignore this," he said finally. "If this is their way of inviting us to follow, we need to take the chance." "But it's dangerous," Ryan countered. "We don't know what's on the other side, or if we'll even survive the journey." Samantha looked up from her laptop, her expression resolute. "If we don't go, we'll never know. Isn't that why we're here? To find answers." The team exchanged glances, weighing the risks. Finally, Eric nodded. "All right, we'll go, but we prepare for anything." Back on the ground, they spent hours planning every detail. They reinforced the jet with experimental shielding designed to withstand extreme conditions. Samantha programmed the scanner to map the portal's structure in real time, hoping to stabilize their passage. Jason and Laura offered remote support, feeding them data and simulations to ensure their safety. As the team prepared for the mission, Katie wrote furiously, capturing every moment. This was no longer just a story. It was history in the making. Humanity was about to step beyond the boundaries of Earth, into the unknown. And somewhere deep inside, each of them wondered, what would they find on the other side? The days following the encounter over the Atlantic were a blur of activity. Samantha Brooks spent nearly every waking moment analyzing the audio recordings, her desk cluttered with notes and diagrams. The patterns in the alien ship's hum had grown clearer, but translating them into anything resembling human language was proving to be a monumental challenge. She often worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and sheer determination. Katie Monroe stayed close, documenting every step of the process. She admired Samantha's focus and resilience, though she could see the toll it was taking. Dark circles had formed under Samantha's eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the dials on her equipment. "You need to rest," Katie said one evening, placing a cup of tea beside her. "You're pushing yourself too hard." "I can't stop now," Samantha replied without looking up. "Every second counts. If I miss something, we might lose our chance to understand them." But even Samantha couldn't ignore the signs that her body was reaching its limit. One night, after hours of staring at waveforms and frequency graphs, she slumped forward, her head hitting the desk with a soft thud. Katie rushed to her side, shaking her gently until she woke up. "That's it," Katie said firmly. "You're done for tonight." Reluctantly, Samantha agreed to take a break. Jason Carter, who had been monitoring their progress remotely, noticed the change in her demeanor during their next video call. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "I'll be fine," Samantha assured him, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. "It's just, this feels so big, like we're standing on the edge of something incredible, and I don't want to mess it up." "You're not alone in this," Jason reminded her. "We're all here with you. Take the time you need." While Samantha rested, Eric Dawson and Ryan Ellis focused on refining the scanner. They integrated new algorithms to predict when and where the distortions might occur next. The goal was simple: to catch the ships before they vanished, giving the team more time to study them. Eric also suggested modifying the jet to carry additional sensors, ensuring they wouldn't miss any crucial data during future encounters. Meanwhile, Katie used the downtime to write an article summarizing what they'd learned so far. She included quotes from Samantha about the potential messages hidden in the hums, as well as technical insights from Eric and Ryan. The piece sparked widespread interest, drawing attention from scientists, journalists, and even government officials. Some praised the team's efforts, while others criticized their lack of concrete answers. But Katie didn't let the backlash discourage her. She knew they were closer than ever to uncovering the truth. When Samantha returned to work, she felt refreshed and ready to tackle the mystery again. With fresh eyes, she revisited the recordings, noticing details she'd overlooked before. The patterns weren't just random. They formed sequences that repeated in cycles. It was as if the aliens were using a kind of cosmic Morse code, sending bursts of information in waves. "This is it," Samantha said excitedly, calling the team together. "I think I've found the key." These sequences, they're consistent across multiple sightings. It's like they're telling us something specific. Eric leaned over her shoulder, studying the patterns. "If we can decode this, maybe we can send a response." Ryan nodded. "And if we do, we need to be careful. We don't know how they'll react." Jason chimed in via video call. "What if we use the scanner to broadcast a signal? Something simple, like a mathematical sequence or a basic greeting." The idea electrified the group. For the first time, they weren't just passive observers. They had a plan to make contact. As they worked out the logistics, Katie watched silently, her pen poised over her notebook. This was the story she'd been waiting for, the moment humanity stepped out of the shadows and reached for the stars. But as the team prepared for their next move, a question lingered in everyone's mind. What would happen if the aliens answered back? The team's patience was finally rewarded one crisp evening when the scanner picked up a faint but unmistakable ripple in space-time. The alert came through just as Eric Dawson was reviewing the latest upgrades to the device. His phone buzzed loudly on the table, and he grabbed it immediately. The message was short but urgent. "Distortion detected. Coordinates attached." Without wasting a second, Eric called Samantha and Katie, who were already waiting at the airbase. Within minutes, they were airborne, racing toward the location over the Atlantic Ocean. The jet's engines roared as they sped through the night sky, the ocean below shimmering under the moonlight. Katie clutched her notebook tightly, her heart pounding with anticipation. This time, they weren't just observers. They were prepared. As they approached the coordinates, the scanner began to beep rapidly. Eric adjusted the controls, narrowing in on the source of the signal. Then they saw it, a massive alien ship hovering silently above the water. Its surface glowed faintly, casting an otherworldly light across the waves. Unlike before, this ship didn't seem to notice their presence. It floated motionless, almost as if it were waiting. "Here we go again," Eric muttered, his hand steady on the controls. He activated the scanner's recording function, ensuring every detail of the event was captured. Samantha leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the ship. She could feel a hum in the air, a low vibration that seemed to resonate in her chest. It was different this time. Stronger, clearer. "I think it's trying to communicate again," she said softly. "Can you hear it?" Katie nodded. The sound was unmistakable, a series of tones that pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Samantha quickly set up her equipment, connecting the jet's audio system to her laptop. As the recording played, she began mapping the frequencies, searching for patterns. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, her focus absolute. Suddenly, the ship emitted a burst of light, brighter than anything they'd seen before. For a moment, the entire area was bathed in its glow. Then, just as quickly, the light dimmed, and the ship began to flicker. The distortion grew stronger, the air around them rippling like water. "It's going to vanish," Eric shouted, gripping the controls. "Hold on." But instead of disappearing completely, the ship paused mid-flicker. A beam of light shot out from its underside, striking the surface of the ocean. The water boiled and churned, creating a swirling vortex that seemed to stretch deep into the earth. Katie gasped, her pen slipping from her hand. "What is that?" she whispered. Samantha didn't answer. Her attention was fixed on her screen, where the frequency patterns had shifted dramatically. "It's a response," she said breathlessly. "Whatever this is, it's reacting to something." Moments later, the vortex collapsed, and the ship vanished, leaving behind only calm waters and silence. Back on the ground, the team gathered to review what they'd witnessed. Samantha replayed the audio, pointing out subtle changes in the tones. "I think it's a warning," she said. "Or maybe a plea. There's urgency in the pattern." Jason and Laura joined the discussion remotely, sharing new data from their observatory. They had detected traces of exotic particles in the atmosphere, evidence of the ship's interaction with Earth's environment. "This isn't random," Jason said. "They're doing something specific." "But what?" Katie scribbled furiously in her notebook, piecing together the fragments of information. Whatever the aliens' intentions were, they were communicating in ways humanity barely understood. And for the first time, the team felt they were close to deciphering the message. The recording of the alien ship's hum played on a loop in the lab, filling the room with its eerie, rhythmic tones. Samantha Brooks sat hunched over her desk, headphones clamped tightly over her ears as she listened intently. Her fingers moved across a notepad, jotting down patterns and repetitions she noticed in the sound. It wasn't language as humans understood it, but there was structure, pauses, shifts in pitch, and sequences that repeated like a code waiting to be cracked. Katie Monroe watched from the corner of the room, scribbling notes for her article. She had never seen someone so focused. Samantha barely blinked, her brow furrowed in concentration as she worked through the audio piece by piece. Every now and then, she would pause the recording, rewind it, and play it again, her lips moving silently as if testing out theories in her mind. "It's like music," Samantha said finally, pulling off her headphones. "But not just any music. It's layered. There are multiple frequencies overlapping, each carrying its own message." "Do you think you can translate it?" Katie asked, leaning forward. "I don't know yet," Samantha admitted. "But I'm starting to see shapes, patterns that might correspond to meaning. If I can map them, maybe I can find a way to interpret it." While Samantha dove deeper into the audio, Eric Dawson and Ryan Ellis pored over the data collected by the scanner during the encounter over the Pacific. The readings were unlike anything they'd ever seen, spikes of energy that didn't match any known natural phenomenon. What intrigued Eric most was how the distortions seemed to pulse in sync with the hum emitted by the ship. "They're linked," Eric said, pointing to the graphs on his screen. "The sound isn't just communication. It's part of whatever process they use to vanish. Maybe even to open those portals." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "If we could replicate that frequency, we might be able to detect when and where the next portal will form, or maybe even stabilize one long enough to study it." Jason Carter joined the conversation via video call, his face lighting up at the idea. "That's huge," he said. "But how do we test it? We can't exactly chase after these ships every time they show up." "We don't have to," Eric replied. "We've got the scanner. Next time we get a reading, we'll be ready." Days turned into weeks as the team prepared for their next opportunity. They refined the scanner, adding features to track the distortions more accurately. Jason and Laura kept watch at the observed check grammar and rewrite. The joint task force quickly came together, a mix of brilliant minds and skilled professionals from different backgrounds. The group included Eric Dawson, whose experience as both a pilot and engineer made him invaluable. Samantha Brooks, a linguist known for her work decoding ancient languages, and Dr. Ryan Ellis, who continued to analyze the mysterious energy signatures left behind by the alien ships. Jason Carter and Laura Bennett joined remotely, sharing their findings from the observatory in Arizona. Katie Monroe documented every step, her notebook filling up with sketches, quotes, and observations. Their first meeting took place in a secure facility outside Washington, D.C. The room buzzed with nervous energy as everyone introduced themselves and shared what they knew so far. Eric stood at the front, pointing to a large screen displaying a map of recent sightings. "We've got ships appearing near Earth almost daily now," he said. "Each time, they leave behind those energy spikes Rand mentioned, but we still don't know why or where they're going." Samantha raised her hand hesitantly. "What if they're trying to communicate? Those symbols people have been reporting. They might be messages." Katie nodded. "I've been collecting recordings of those symbols. Some amateur astronomers captured them on video. If anyone can decode them, it's you." Samantha smiled faintly but looked uncertain. Deciphering unknown languages was never easy, especially when the source was entirely alien. Still, she agreed to give it a try. As the days passed, the team worked tirelessly, pooling their knowledge and resources. Jason and Laura sent updates from Arizona, highlighting new patterns in the ship's behavior. They noticed that the vessels often appeared during periods of high solar activity, though the connection wasn't clear yet. Meanwhile, Ryan ran simulations to better understand the energy signatures. His results suggested the ships were creating temporary portals, brief openings in spacetime that allowed them to travel elsewhere. Eric focused on designing tools to detect these portals in real time. He envisioned a device that could pick up on the ripples Jason and Laura had identified, giving them advance warning whenever a ship was about to vanish. With help from technicians, he built a prototype, a small handheld scanner equipped with sensors tuned to the specific frequency of the distortions. One evening, as the team reviewed their progress, an urgent alert came in. A new sighting had been reported over the Pacific Ocean. This time, the ship was unusually close to Earth, hovering just above the water. Eric grabbed the prototype scanner and rushed to a nearby airbase, accompanied by Samantha and Katie. They boarded a reconnaissance jet, its engines roaring to life as they prepared for takeoff. The flight was tense. Katie clutched her notebook, scribbling notes while glancing out the window at the endless expanse of ocean below. Samantha sat quietly, her mind racing with possibilities. What if they encountered the aliens? Would they be hostile or curious? Eric, focused and calm, kept his eyes on the horizon, scanning for any sign of the ship. When they arrived at the coordinates, the sight took their breath away. The alien vessel floated silently, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. It pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, casting strange shadows across the waves. Eric activated the scanner, which immediately began beeping rapidly. The readings confirmed what they'd suspected. The ship was generating the same distortion pattern they'd seen before. But then something unexpected happened. The ship didn't vanish right away. Instead, it emitted a low hum, vibrating through the cockpit of the jet. Samantha leaned forward, her eyes wide. "It's communicating," she whispered. "Listen." The sound shifted, forming patterns that almost resembled speech. Though none of them could understand it, The intent felt clear, as if the ship was trying to say something important. For a moment, everyone held their breath, unsure of what would happen next. And then, without warning, the ship flickered and disappeared, leaving only silence behind. Back on the ground, the team replayed the audio recording endlessly, searching for meaning. Samantha pored over the sounds, convinced there was a message hidden within. Katie wrote furiously, capturing every detail for her story. And Eric stared at the data from the scanner, wondering how close they'd come to unlocking the mystery, and how much farther they still had to go. Over the next few days, reports of strange sightings poured in from all over the world. Satellites orbiting Earth captured images of more alien ships appearing near the planet, lingering for hours and then disappearing just as mysteriously as the first one Jason and Laura had observed. Scientists scrambled to piece together what was happening, but no patterns seemed to emerge. Each event was unique, unpredictable, and baffling. Katie Monroe sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of notes and printouts of blurry photos sent in by amateur astronomers. Her laptop screen displayed a map of the globe marked with red dots indicating where the ships had been spotted. The locations were random, over oceans, deserts, cities, but there was something unsettling about how close they always came to Earth before vanishing. She tapped her pen against the table, deep in thought. There had to be a connection, some kind of explanation that tied everything together. Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Dr. Ryan Ellis, a physicist she'd interviewed years ago for an article on wormholes. "I think you should see this," he wrote, attaching a file labeled Energy Signature Analysis. Katie opened it and frowned. The graph showed spikes in electromagnetic activity moments before each disappearance. Whatever these ships were doing, they weren't just fading away. They were leaving behind traces of energy. Curious, Katie decided to visit Ryan at his lab. When she arrived, he greeted her with a cup of coffee and a weary smile. "You're not going to believe this," he said, leading her to a cluttered workstation. On the monitor was a simulation showing how the energy signatures interacted with Earth's magnetic field. "It's like they're using our planet's natural forces to, I don't know, jump somewhere else." "Jump?" Katie echoed, raising an eyebrow. "You mean like teleportation?" Ryan hesitated. "Not exactly. More like opening a door and stepping through. But where they're going, or why, they haven't given us any clues." Meanwhile, back in Arizona, Jason and Laura were growing increasingly frustrated. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't find anything concrete to explain the disappearances. Every new piece of data only raised more questions. One night, while reviewing footage from a recent sighting, Laura noticed something odd. Just before the ship vanished, the air around it shimmered faintly, almost like heat waves rising off asphalt. She replayed the clip several times, zooming in until the pixels blurred. "Jason, come look at this," she called out. He hurried over, peering at the screen. "What am I looking for?" "Right here," she said, pointing to the edge of the ship's glow. "See that ripple? It's barely noticeable, but it's there." Jason leaned closer, his brow furrowing. "You're right. It's like space itself is bending." The realization hit them both at once. If the ships were causing distortions in spacetime, it meant they weren't simply disappearing. They were traveling somewhere else. But where? And how? As word of their discovery spread, NASA convened a meeting with top scientists and military officials to discuss the implications. Among those invited was Eric Dawson, a former Air Force pilot who now worked as an aerospace engineer. He listened intently as Jason and Laura presented their findings, nodding slowly when they mentioned the ripples. "I've seen something similar during high-speed atmospheric re-entry," Eric said after the presentation. "But on a much smaller scale. This is bigger, like they're punching holes in reality." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed his words. No one dared to say what they were all thinking. If these aliens could manipulate spacetime, what did that mean for humanity? Were they being watched, studied, or worse, were they in danger? By the end of the meeting, A plan began to take shape. A joint task force would be assembled, combining expertise from various fields to investigate further. Eric volunteered to lead the technical team, while Jason and Laura agreed to continue analyzing the data. Katie, eager to document the unfolding mystery, requested permission to embed with the group. After some debate, her request was granted. That night, as Katie packed her bag for the journey ahead, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into uncharted territory. The stakes were higher than ever, and the answers they sought might change everything humanity knew about the universe and its place within it. The night sky above the Arizona desert was clear, dotted with countless stars that seemed to stretch endlessly. Jason Carter leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. He had been staring at the computer screen for hours, analyzing data from the latest deep space scans. The hum of the observatory's equipment filled the quiet room, a comforting background noise after so many late nights spent searching for answers. Jason wasn't alone. Across the table sat Laura Bennett, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she cross-checked readings from multiple telescopes. She glanced up briefly and smiled. "Still nothing unusual?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Not yet," Jason replied, stifling a yawn. "But you never know. Something could pop up any time." And then it did. A sudden blip appeared on one of the monitors, a cluster of objects moving rapidly toward Earth's orbit. At first, Jason thought it might be debris or satellites malfunctioning, but as he zoomed in, his heart skipped a beat. These weren't human-made. Their shapes were sleek, almost organic, glowing faintly against the blackness of space. "Laura, look at this," he said, his voice trembling slightly. She rushed over, her eyes widening as she studied the image. "What are they?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. Neither of them had an answer. For the next hour, they tracked the mysterious ships, watching as they hovered near Earth without making any aggressive moves. It was surreal, like witnessing something out of a sci-fi movie. But just as they began recording detailed observations, something extraordinary happened. One of the largest ships flickered, its glow intensifying for a brief moment before vanishing completely. "What just happened?" Laura exclaimed, leaning closer to the screen. Her hands moved frantically over the keyboard, trying to pinpoint where the ship had gone. But there was no trace left behind, not even a ripple in space. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. "It's like it disappeared into thin air." They spent the rest of the night going over the data, replaying the footage frame by frame. Nothing explained what they'd seen. No explosion, no trajectory change, no signal interference. It was as if the ship had simply ceased to exist. Word of their discovery spread quickly within the scientific community. By morning, calls were flooding in from researchers and government agencies alike. Everyone wanted answers, but Jason and Laura didn't have any. All they could do was describe what they'd witnessed: alien ships appearing near Earth and then vanishing without explanation. As the day wore on, media outlets picked up the story, speculating wildly about everything from secret military experiments to interstellar tourists. Among those following the news was Katie Monroe, a journalist known for her investigative pieces on unexplained phenomena. Intrigued by the reports, she decided to dig deeper. If anyone could uncover the truth, it was her. Back at the observatory, Jason and Laura continued their work, determined to make sense of the impossible. They ran simulations, checked for technical errors, and consulted experts in astrophysics. Yet every test came back inconclusive. Whatever these ships were, they defied all known laws of physics. That evening, as Jason gazed out the window at the starry sky, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was standing on the brink of something monumental. Whether it was good or bad, he didn't know. But one thing was certain: the universe had just become a lot stranger and far less predictable. Little did he realize, this was only the beginning.